Good day and welcome to another edition of Citizens Movement Radio News, the mostly listened to in Zimbabwe, Africa and the whole world. Today is Friday, the 1st of August 2025. I'm Bernard Stele, ready to bring you the latest news and updates. Here are today's headlines on Citizens Movement Radio News. Don't waste resources fighting me, invest in key ministries. President Chamisa tells Mnangagwa. Calls for justice for victims of 1 August military killings. Opposition Shadow Minister of Finance gives an in-depth comment on midterm budget review. Now let's delve into the detailed stories. The Citizens President Advocate Nelson Chamisa has castigated Emerson Mnangagwa's government for investing so much state resources in destroying him instead of funding key government ministries. Posting on his communication platforms today, Advocate Chamisa said a lot of money was pumped into spooky and nefarious organizations like FARS to do hasty jobs and manipulate elections at the expense of funding development. President Chamisa, however, warned the regime that all the efforts to destroy him will go to waste. Citizens Movement Radio spoke to Zimbabweans to hear their views on President Chamisa's comments.
Afternoon, fellow citizens. From what is currently happening and what the Citizen President Advocate Nelson Chamisa has said in castigating Emerson Mnangagwa's regime, which has actually invested very heavily in state resources in trying to destroy him as an individual. It's so embarrassing that the state, instead of helping hospitals, instead of investing money in things that are tangible in helping people, they've actually invested their money in trying to destroy an individual who is not even the country itself, but just a fellow individual who's just like you and me. But they've invested all their monies to try to actually pull pull down the individual who is the Citizens President Advocate Nelson Chamisa, and it's so embarrassing, very, very embarrassing, especially to us citizens. We are embarrassed by what the current regime is actually doing. They should stop it, actually. They should stop targeting him and make sure that they put their state resources to things that are very useful to the country itself. Thank you very much.
Hello citizens, hello Zimbabwe. Concerning what President Chamisa said in his platforms, I would really say it's quite a shame that the whole government system actually invests a lot of their resources into destroying one man. This is the thing that we've always said, that Nelson Chamisa is the voice of the people. He is no longer an individual, just a personality. He has outgrown being a personality. He has become an idea of change. Nelson Chamisa's name is an ideology. It's an idea that speaks of a difference, that speaks of a revolution against repression. It's an idea of sanity in the government systems. It's an idea of running the country into greatness again. It's an idea of achieving it in peace, not by violence, that the people of ZANU-PF believe. And it's so amazing that the regime have taken it upon themselves to fight Nelson Chamisa in every way that they can, whilst we know that there are so many political parties in Zimbabwe, so many political figures in Zimbabwe, but we see that the intensity in which they fight Nelson Chamisa is actually different. They invest quite a lot just to make sure that he and all those people that are around him are destroyed. Anybody that speaks in favor of Nelson Chamisa becomes an enemy of the state. And we begin to wonder what kind of a democracy we have, because we believe that in a democratic society, people are allowed to associate with whomsoever they want to associate with. It's actually in our constitution, it's enshrined in the constitution of Zimbabwe that we've got freedom of speech, we have freedom of association. There are so many freedoms that we have, but we see that in Zimbabwe, under this repressive regime, we don't enjoy those freedoms, you know. And we see that most of the people who don't enjoy those freedoms are the people who support Nelson Chamisa. So Nelson Chamisa is no longer just an individual, but he is an idea. That's why the government can invest so much, because they know that this idea, its time has come. And since the time of the idea has come, it's going to manifest. And they're trying to do whatever they can to make sure that they pull it down. But unfortunately, they've not been able to do so up until now. And I don't think they will ever be able to defeat the idea of change, the idea of Nelson Chamisa. Thank you.
Today marks exactly 7 years since military shootings in the streets of Harare that left 6 people dead. The 6 are Sylvia Maposa, Ishmael Kumire, Gavin Dean Charles, Skosana Ngube, Brian Joao, and Kelvin Tinashe Choto. One of the senior opposition officials, Stephen Sarkozy Chuma, called for justice to all the victims of military shootings on the day. Speaking to Citizens Movement Radio, he called for prosecution of military officials who ordered the killings. Chuma also called for the government to implement recommendations of the Motlanthe Commission. Let's hear more from Chuma.
Yes, it's 7 years since the butchering of innocent civilians in the streets of Harare on 1 August 2018. We continue to call for justice for those 6 people who were killed on 1 August and also others who were injured by bullets. While Mr. Emerson Mnangagwa did appear and called for Motlanthe Commission of Inquiry, nothing much has been done to make sure that recommendations of the same inquiry are put into effect. Therefore, we also call for the government to implement recommendations by the Motlanthe Commission. We also demand the justice for victims of the 1 August 2018 military shootings. Yes, we heard that recently there's one person who was granted US 25,000 for the injuries that he sustained. But we know that this is not enough. We want these people to be supported throughout their life because they've been disturbed their normal way of life by the same government. We also want criminals who were behind the shootings from senior army officials to face justice, to be prosecuted in line with the provisions of the law of the country.
Opposition Shadow Minister of Finance and Bizo Member of Parliament Honorable Koban Madzvanyika has added his views to the midterm budget review presented by Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube. Speaking to Citizens Movement Radio, Honorable Madzvanyika said the economy is getting worse because of the government's continued use of ZiG currency. Let's hear him explaining in full.
The 2025 mid-year fiscal budget review statement is the same old rhetoric that we've been experiencing over time. It's not inspiring at all. It does not promote or create enthusiasm. It is just the same old statements that we've seen since time immemorial. First of all, a mid-year budget review statement is just an evaluation of budget performance for the first 6 months of the year. We'll be trying to look if the expected or the projected revenue that we expected to this country to generate versus the projected expenditures as given or appropriated by Parliament in the Appropriation Act is matching. We'll be trying to track if we are still on course with the appropriations versus the revenues collected for that purpose. So you will find that there are fundamental issues that I wish to raise against this presentation by the Honorable Minister of Finance with regard to the mid-year budget review statement. First of all, the issue of misplaced priorities continues. As Parliament, we appropriated more money to the Minister of Education. We appropriated more money to the Minister of Health. We appropriated more money to the Minister of Public Service so that social services can be provided to the generality of the Zimbabweans. It is so fundamental that when one pays tax, he or she must understand the reason why he's paying tax, must actually see the benefits of paying tax. And the low-hanging fruit in terms of tax morality is the issue to deal with the health, education, and social protection. It is so embarrassing. It is so absurd to see the Minister of Finance disbursing 81% of the budget to the Office of the President Cabinet. within the first 6 months of the year. It is also disheartening to see that the Ministry of Finance went on to disburse 116% of the budget allocated to Ministry of Transport. What it means is that the minister has gone out of his way. The minister failed to live within the means given by Parliament. And for that matter, therefore, you realize that critical issues such as the health, if you look at our health situation, there is dilapidated infrastructure, there is no medical equipment, whether life-saving, whether diagnostic, whether general use, you see, general use equipment. So when that then happens, we are losing a lot of trained personnel to other countries as a result of failure to pay them adequately. And then the Minister of Finance went on to allocate a meager 25% of the budget to the Ministry of Health. Yet the expectation is by mid-year, we expected over 40 or over 40% to 50% allocation or disbursement to the Ministry of Health. But alas, nothing has happened on the ground. The same applies to the Ministry of Education. A meager 31% was offered, was disbursed by the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance went on to disburse 24% of the budget to Ministry of Public Service, which is very crucial because it is the ministry which harbors the issue of BEAM, the BEAM, the basic education assistance module. Right now, Zimbabwe has got an outstanding debt of 193 million US dollars as a result of BEAM areas. And the schools are being overburdened across the country. But the minister went on to give a meager 24%. And there was no allocation for a program for BEAM. Imagine the kind of embarrassment that we are seeing from the other minister. So it appears this government is consistent in its ways of misplacing misplaced priorities. Priorities that are not urgent, priorities that do not reflect the urgent issues affecting the generality of Zimbabweans at hand. The second issue arising from this mid-year budget review statement is the issue of blatant and gross violation of the law. Our Supreme Constitution has been violated several times since time immemorial when it comes to issues to do with the public finance management. Section 305 of the Constitution, subsection 5, says that whenever a minister allocates or disburses money which is more than that which was approved by Parliament, then the whole budget becomes null and void, and therefore there is need to have a supplemented budget. That is clearly explained in section 305, subsection 5 of the Constitution. But the minister, when presenting the 2025 mid-year budget statement, he has allocated 116% to the Minister of Transport, which means the Minister of Transport has actually used more than what was allocated by Parliament. And it's only for the first 6 months. How much more at the end of the year? It would have used about over 300 or 400% of what was allocated by Parliament. And we expected the minister to follow the law, to ensure that a supplementary budget is supposed to be tabled in Parliament. Unfortunately, the minister did not provide the supplementary budget according to the dictates of the law. There is also the violation of the section 327 of the Constitution, which mandates the minister to ensure that all loans, whether domestic or foreign, are subject to parliamentary approval before they are contracted or concluded. And to that effect, Zimbabwe is, from January to June, borrowed 1.3 billion ZiG using treasury bills and also private placements. So when what it means is therefore is that the minister has violated the law again in terms of borrowing. All borrowing must be done with the approval of Parliament. This is also corroborated by the Zim Code versus the Minister of Finance High Court judgment, which was delivered by Justice Munangat in 2023, which actually asked the Minister of Finance to ensure that all borrowing is approved by Parliament. All right. Thirdly, one of the fundamental issues that I wish to raise is the issue of lack of transparency and accountability in our state-owned enterprises. The bulk of our state-owned enterprises, if not all, are now under the umbrella of Mutapa Investment Fund. Mutapa Investment Fund was constituted in September 2023, but up to now, we are now in the July 2025. There is no single financial statement showing the activities of Mutapa Investment Fund. To that effect, this is also a direct violation of Section 298 of the Constitution, which provides that all government or all public finances must be done in a transparent and accountable manner. So to that effect, as it says, there's no disclosure as to how much was bought by Mtapa, how much was sold, and what are the financial transactions. Everything remains opaque. And as such, we cannot say that there is substance in a budget review statement where we expect to see full disclosure and accountability in terms of the Constitution. You also find that it is so fundamental. We hear that the gross domestic product has been rebased. The gross domestic product has been rebased to 45 billion from the previously 35 billion. an increase by 9 billion. But you will find that the rebased figures, they fall short of expectations in this country. Whenever the gross domestic product increases, we also expect to see a corresponding increase in the standard of living for our people. We should expect to see corresponding increases in the way in savings. We should also expect to see corresponding increases in the quality of life that our people are living. As it stands, the budget review did not even brought together a new list of life in terms of tax reliefs. There were no salary adjustments for civil servants. So there is virtually nothing. It is still empty. We used to hear budget review statements where the lives of people, civil servants, are improved. But alas, we continue to hear stories of corruption, and also corruption. So you find that the reinvestment of the gross domestic product was intended to window dress statistics of Zimbabwe, to pretend as if the Vision 20 of having an income per capita of 4,000 per capita being achieved. Because as it stands, with the new GDP, it appears that we are now on a 3,000 US dollar per capita in terms of national income. And they will be pretending as if Vision 2030 is we are meeting the standards or the objectives of Vision 2030. Yet we're not meeting anything. NGS1 has failed drastically. And there's nothing, purely nothing to show for it. And for that matter, therefore, I wish to categorically state that the 2025 budget review statement that is not, it does not create a stimulus to the economy, is not creating an enthusiasm to the economy. It is vague, it is empty, it is now, it does not add any value. It is the same old rhetoric.
The Auditor General's report released this week exposes deep corruption in public institutions like parliament and councils. Opposition official Sam Gondongwe said there's lack of will by the government to fight corruption despite its so-called zero tolerance to corruption. Gondongwe said despite glaring evidence of corruption by the report, officials linked to the cases are never arrested. He said,
Prosecutor General Matanda Moyo has condemned unbridled corruption in the country. She has produced a scathing report on corruption, but yet we all know that a cry and the report is for shelving by the powers that be. No action will ever be taken on corruption. You look at our situation in Zimbabwe, every same person who shuns corruption or who is against corruption, and if you say, I've seen corruption happening, you are the first person to be arrested. If you want to see that corruption is respected in Zimbabwe, just move around in town and maybe just say, corruption, you are stupid, you corruption, you are stupid. You will not spend even 20 minutes before you are arrested, like you have spoken about a person. So the powers that be, they need to really act with urgency and bring down this scourge of corruption, because corruption is destroyed the resources that are intended for hospitals, for schools, and for infrastructure development. So, Prosecutor General Matanda Moyo, what she's saying is true, but now we need to put our heads together and fight from below. We should always be speaking against corruption wherever we are, in whatever we are doing, and in whatever form. If we are in church, let's preach that corruption is bad. When we are in sport, let's talk about corruption. When we are in schools, let's talk about corruption until it reaches the highest offices, though they know, because you know the small fish are the ones that are being caught, but the big fish are left to swim freely as they want. Those that are siphoning millions and millions of our resources are never asked a question. But you see a police officer who gets $5 is charged and spends is put to jail, 4 years in jail. But the ones that steal millions of dollars are left free. So let's act like we are human beings. Let's act like we care for the generation that is coming, the now and the later, because these resources should sustain our nation, should sustain our developmental status, the infrastructure that we need to build should proceed minus corruption. But if these corrupt leaders are still in their chairs, then there is nothing that is going to happen when it comes to infrastructure development. We really need new leaders.
Citizens in Matabeleland South Province said the government has neglected their province when it comes to development. Opposition official in the province, Edgar Ncube, says there are so many unfinished government projects in the province, leaving villagers facing challenges to access government services. He said in Chamisa, the registry building where construction began in 2001 is yet to be completed. Ncube said,
Kulobunzima kakhulu esigabeni seMatabeleland South okokuthi izakhamizi zithwele nzima azenelisi ukuthi zifinyelele ukuthola ama-services okumele ziwathole ngesikhathi esifaneleyo. Kunjenje into zinengi ezenzakalayo ngingabalisa kunye ngakubili kodwa ngeke ngize ngikuqede. Kodwa for example ngakunikeza indawo njenge-Chamisa lapho kwaqala khona ukuthi kwakhiwa i-registry building kuze kube lanamhlanje since 2001 ayikapheli. Uthola ukuthi ezibhedlela abantu abafinyeleli ukuthi bafike ezibhedlela ngesikhathi ngesizathu sokuthi imigwaqo imoshakele, ama-clinics akhatshana kulabanye abantu. So isifiso sabantu kuyikuthi aluba ama-clinics ayakhiwa ngezindawo ngezigaba ukwenzela ukuthi abantu bafinyelele ukuthi bathole ukusizakala nxa bephathekile kumbe begula. Nganika futhi umzekeliso wabomama abazithweleyo nxa sebefuna ukuthi bayebeletha. Bahamba imango emide bathola ngezinqola, imigwaqo ngamagodigodi, vele kusuka kube nzima kakhulu and akukuhle kuzakhamizi. So as Matabeleland South sizizwa sengathi siyabandlululo kumbe sichiwe eceleni, asinakekelwa ngendlela esikhangelele ngayo. Manengi nje ama-projects engingawabala in Matabeleland South aqala angapheli. Ngifanisele eGwanda edolobheni kule court okwathi iyakhiwa kuze kube lanamhlanje ilokhu imi kayiphutsha sazi ukuthi okumisayo yini. Kodwa ke konke lokho sikuthatha njengokuthi uhulumende kasinaki thina njengabantu besabeleni seMatabeleland South. Ngalawa mafitshane ngiyabonga.
Renowned journalist Blessed Mhlanga said he's disappointed by the courts for taking too long to kickstart his trial. Mhlanga said the courts yesterday dismissed his application to have commencement of trial on the day. He said the delays of his trial are affecting his movements and job and there's a bearing in his family welfare. Mhlanga is facing trumped-up charges of transmitting messages with intent to incite public violence, following his interviews with war veteran comrade Blessed Geza. The Zinasu spokesperson for Masvingo Province, Darlington Robert Matola, who was suspended from classes at the Great Zimbabwe University for seeking accountability at the university through a WhatsApp group, has taken the university to court over his suspension. The court hearing will be held on the 15th of September at the High Court in Masvingo. CMR spoke to Kanyezi Ndlovu, a youth leader who attended recently ended COP15 Ramsar conference, to share his thoughts on the importance of wetland conservation. Let's hear him speak.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. COP15 conference in Victoria Falls, the agenda mainly was on protection, preservation, and the restoration of wetlands across the globe. So wetlands play a very critical role in terms of, water source, food security, and as well as the promotion of diversity within a given society. As Zimbabwe, we've done so well in terms of preserving the wetlands. Our country has done so well because we are part of the signatory to Ramsar Convention, which deals with mainly restoration, protection, and preservation of wetlands. Victoria Falls has become one of the first cities in Zimbabwe to be declared as a Ramsar city, which is a good achievement. So the fact that our country has signed as a signatory to such convention simply means it is committed to make sure that wetlands like Victoria Falls, Manapus, and other smaller wetlands across the country are well preserved. For example, now in Material North there's a well-managed wetland which has been restored, the Kasibo wetlands. We went there, we visited the place. Before restoration, the wetland was destroyed. The community couldn't even get water for their water dams because most of their sources were coming from that wetland, which is the Kasibo wetland. Now that it has been restored, there is a continuous availability of water throughout the year. What is key now as a country, from village level going upwards, is to raise awareness to our people on the importance of wetland and why it is important that we protect such wetland. Yeah, because wetland, they are an epicenter of biodiversity. So it is key that as a people we protect them so that we don't find ourselves wanting as far as wetland is concerned. Thank you.
In a sad case, the municipality of Chitungwiza has announced the tragic death of Simon Maketo, a refuse collection worker who died in a work-related accident in Manyame Park. He reportedly panicked while the truck attempted to maneuver around a stationary commuter omnibus, hitting his head on a wall before being struck by a vehicle. Maketo was rushed to hospital but was pronounced dead on arrival. The municipality expressed deep sorrow and extended condolences to his family, friends and colleagues. Former Binga North MP Prince Dupeko Sibanda has called for total removal of ZBC radio and TV licenses, saying there is no justification for citizens to pay for ZANU-PF propaganda. His comments follows discussions in Parliament this week where legislators lobbied for the reduction of license fees. The newly passed Broadcasting Services Amendment Act, which compels motorists to acquire ZBC licenses before their vehicle insurances and licenses, has been heavily criticized by citizens. Back to our top story, we spoke to more citizens to hear their views on President Chamisa's comments that Mr. Mnangagwa must focus on the economy and not him.
President Chamisa's words are not a surprise to us, the sons and daughters of Zimbabwe. Since 1999, from the formation of the Movement for Democratic Change, this has been happening where thousands, if not millions, were allocated just to tarnish or to destroy the image of the leaders of these opposition movements. But today, it hurts so much that all these expenses are being made or being done at the expense of the citizens that are languishing in poverty, poor education, poor roads, poor infrastructure. Like the whole system is rotten to the core. But we see this evil regime in Harare spending so much just in tarnishing the name of one advocate, Nelson Chamisa. But we know this has been happening, and it's time for Zimbabweans to stand up like never before in defending the name of our beloved son of the soil, Advocate Nelson Chamisa. Change is inevitable, God is in it, and with or without criticism, we are getting there. People have actually realized who their real enemy is, and nothing is going to change or twist the way people feel or think about the current regime in Harare.
Nokuchingamidza veCMR nemhuri yese yeZimbabwe mwakadini pamukutaura kwaitwa naPresident Advocate Chamisa paplatform yavo apo. Masoko anorwadza chaizvo kuona nyika ichipedza maresources kuzama kudestroya munhu ane vision, ane muono unosunungura mwana weshe weZimbabwe, muono unoisa mishonga muzvipatara, muono unoisa mabhuku muzvipatara, masectors ese kuti afambe zvakanaka, muono unoita kuti nyika ive ine mari. Asi ndipo panotorwa millions and millions kuri kuzama kudestroya muono iyona, chiri chinangwa chekuti vaviri vega vadye. Zvetinoona kubva kuma80s tinondoona kuti ZANU-PF ndokuita kwayo yaishandisa mari dzakawanda chidestroya. Nhasi uno
tiri kuona dzimba dzevanhu dzinopwanywa, fuel yekuise mudzimba yekupwanya dzimba dzevanhu inoonekwa. Asi pangozi yakaitika mazuva apfuura panapa, pakashayika even crane inosimudza truck rakanga radzimbirira motika. Asi takaona kuti pa 2018 and 2023 pakabudiswa mari dzakawanda ichipiwa kufazi, chiri chinangwa chekukanya muono vision ina advocate yekuti muZimbabwe wese ange akagara zvakasununguka. Nhasi uno tiri kuona kuti maZimbabweans kunana Joburg vari kurambidzwa kupinda mumahospitals vachidzingirirwa nevanenge vane pamwiri. Chiri chinangwa chekuzi dzokai munogadzirisa nyika yenyu, pane kuti ivo vaise mishonga muzvipatara, ivo vanopedza kuda kudestroya vision. Takaona mazuva asopfuura vamwe vakanga vakaiswa macardbox nekushayiwa kwemaplastara muzvipatara, asi mari iri kupedzwa. Chiri chinangwa chekudestroya vision yekuita kuti mwana weshe weZimbabwe agare zvakanaka. Vana muzvikoro vari kudzingwa each and every day. Primary education inofanira kuita free, asi tinondoona kuti mari dzinofanira kuti dziite izvozvo dzinopedzwa. Chiri chinangwa chekudestroy muono wakanaka. Kuzvikoro uko mari dzebhimu hakuna, sinzi hamene kuti dzakapesera zvarini. Mari inopedzwa ichiendeswa kuda kudestroya muono wapresident wekuti mwana weshe weZimbabwe agare zvakanaka. Saka zvinorwadza kunyatsozvitsanangudza, asi ichokwadi chataurwa napresident. Tine chokwadi chekuti new Zimbabwe is loading.
Now let's take a look at our sports news on CMR. There was an update about progress on the refurbishment of National Sports Stadium in Harare from the government during the midterm budget presentation yesterday. Despite reports that renovations are progressing on very well, the men's senior national soccer team, the Warriors, will host Rwanda away from home yet again. The Warriors play Rwanda in September in a World Cup qualifier in South Africa. Dynamos will need to collect maximum points against title chasing Moors tomorrow at Rufaro Stadium to kickstart their safety campaign. Here are full fixtures of Kasolaga Premier Soccer League matches to be played over the weekend. ZPC Kariba vs Green Fuel, Yada vs Triangle United, Simba Bora vs Chicken Inn, FC Platinum vs Scotland, Teo 1 vs Manika Diamonds, Highlanders vs Ngezi Platinum, Bikita Minerals vs Capes United, and Rentals vs Kwekwe United. In selected club friendlies played yesterday, Tottenham Hotspurs beat London rivals Arsenal 1-0 in Hong Kong, courtesy of a long-range goal from Senegalese international Pape Matar Sarr. Barcelona won 7-3 versus FC Seoul of South Korea, while AC Milan thumped Australian side Perth Glory 9-0. To conclude our Citizens Movement radio news, here are the headlines once more. Don't waste resources fighting me, invest in key ministries, President Chamisa tells Mnangagwa. Calls for justice for victims of 1 August military killings. Opposition Shadow Minister of Finance gives an in-depth comment on midterm budget review. The news on CMR English was brought to you by Bernard Chele. Me and the whole crew wishes you all a wonderful weekend. Meet me again in another news bulletin. Good night.